Thank you for joining the Sustainable Angle panel discussion on the challenges in textile recycling and how to overcome them. The panel discussion will be moderated by Tiffany Chen from Techstyle. But first we're going to explore some materials that exemplify the context and the issues that we're going to be talking about. So, most recycled materials that we come across today are actually dealing with synthetics. And of course, all synthetics are oil-based and they're essentially plastics, which is why quite a lot of the materials that we see made from synthetic materials are essentially from recovered PET bottles. However, there are many other sources of recycled materials. So here we're looking at a selection from our panelist, Recyctex. So you can see lots of different weights and qualities from sort of technological and more kind of dressy weight materials. But I think what's really important to understand is that we can have two primary routes for recycling our synthetics. One of that is mechanical recycling, and that means that we take a material, either a used textile or from a PET plastic bottle, and we're mechanically breaking that down by either shredding, pulling apart, and then it's melted down and formed into pellets. And those PET pellets then move on to the manufacturing stage. So they are remelted and extruded out into new fibres. So that's the sort of more obvious type of recycling that you'll come across. The other way of recycling is by using chemicals to break down the actual material and take it apart at its molecular level. So literally taking the monomers apart and then rebuilding them back again into polymers or long chain molecules. So those are the two main types. And now we can see the results. Very, very different material properties. So another thing that we need to think about when we're talking about recycled materials is, as I said before, they can come from many, many different fibre categories and also sources. So the two usual waste streams for recycled materials will either be post-consumer textiles or pre-consumer. So what we mean by post-consumer is that will usually be garment state, and that will be something the consumer no longer wants, and that will be recovered through recycling systems and needs to be disassembled, buttons, zips taken away, etc., in order to get at the raw material, and then it can be recycled usually through mechanical recycling, so taking it apart by shredding and respinning. And this is commonly done with fibres such as cotton and wool. And the pre-consumer, when we talk about pre-consumer textiles, we mean that's at the factory stage, where it could be a textile mill's scraps, or it could be from the cutting room floor of a garment manufacturer. So as I said before, typically cotton or wool are usually mechanically recycled in this way. And here we can see these are examples from Kipas, and we'll be meeting the managing director from Kipas in the discussion. Here we have organic cotton mixed with reprieve recycled polyester. So this gives the material strength. And there's some post and pre-consumer denims here. And now we're going to learn more in detail about the challenges presented by producing recycled textiles.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's panel, jointly hosted by 1.618 and Future Fabrics Expo. My name is Tiffany. I'm the founder of Techstyle, a digital marketplace for sustainable materials, and a partner of FFE. It's my absolute honor to be moderating this session on recycling with two industry experts who are specialized on this topic. On the panel today, we have Halit Gumuser, Managing Director of Kipas Textiles, one of Turkey's largest sustainable yarn, fabric, and denim manufacturer. He's joined by Stephen Chueng, founder of Recyctex, a textile mill in China specialized in recycled fabrics made from post-consumer waste. Hi, Halit and Stephen, welcome again.
Hello.
Hi, Tiffany.
I know both of you are doing incredible work in textile recycling and can do a much better job to introduce yourself and your companies. So perhaps, Halit, you can start by sharing with us a bit about Kipas.
Thank you. As Kipas, we are a 25-year-old company. We are operating in three big industry: textile, paper, and cement industries, and also energy industry. And we are employing more than 10,000 people. Textile is our flagship industry, and we are operating from fiber to fabric. We have spinning factories and staple yarn spinning factories and fabric manufacturing mills, such as garment especially, and upholstery fabrics. Our main production areas.
Great. Thank you. And Stephen, can you share with us a bit about Recyctex?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Stephen Chen, the founder and the head of innovation of Recyctex. We are a textile innovation company, and each day we study the materials, think about a closed loop and the circular economy, how to combine the technologies and the fashion and the techniques. My main team and I study recycled material since 2007, so it's almost like 13 years experience. We don't advertise too much, and because we need to focus on our own fields. And until today, we have worked with more than actually 200 brands in Europe and the USA. Some are big and some are small. And we're not simply manufacturing. We truly understand the brand's needs. We can convert the ideas or to help with them to build up the product lines. And also we work with the marketing department, design department, and to create something that is totally made from recycled materials. Our main products are made from plastic bottles and discarded clothes that is chemically recycled metal. I can share a little bit more. And also we introduce the recycled nylon made out of fish nets and discarded carpet in 2014, to make a woven fabric. We have lots of innovations throughout the supply chain. I'm excited to be here to share with you about our insights and about the recycled materials. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. So obviously today's panel is on the challenges in textile recycling and how to overcome them. I think we can all agree that to create a more sustainable future for the fashion industry, we not only have to move towards more non-toxic and non-petroleum based material, but also shift from a linear to circular model to truly reduce waste. And recycling is a really key piece to this puzzle. So as we will hear today, there are still a number of challenges in textile recycling, but thankfully also many advancements in recent years that now makes it really possible to create materials of equal quality to the virgin fabrics. Before we jump into the discussion, I think it would be helpful to define a little bit more what we mean by recycling, as this can often be a long process from waste collection to yarn and textile production involving different technologies. So Halit and Stephen, what do you internally within the company define as recycling? And also specifically, what do you mean by mechanical and chemical recycling? Halit?
As a staple textile manufacturer, we are involved with both chemically recycled and physically recycled materials. We are consuming more than 100,000 tons of fiber every year. We can say that more than 50% of this material is coming from sustainable sources, and we are following all different type of sustainable materials in the market. And what we consider as sustainable materials so far, I mean, let's say 2 years ago, we could only mention BCI cottons, organic cottons, or some tencel kind of lensing brands, and recycled polyester made of plastic bottles. This kind of materials was only available sustainable materials. But during last 2-3 years, pre-consumed materials and post-consumed materials from physical opening process start becoming available in the market. And we are using now more and more this type of material in our productions. When we call physically open material, it means we are collecting pre-consumed or post-industrial waste made of 100% cotton, especially, and not including any lycra or any other blends. We are reopening in shredding and opening factories, and we are using as a fiber these materials in our blends. And thanks to our technology, our setup, we are able to produce up to 100% recycled yarn in our factories.
Wow.
Yeah, it is very unique. Actually, last year we started a project with Tommy, and we made a jeans made of 100% recycled yarn, cotton yarn, in the market. And it was a very successful project. And we also started 100% polyester upholstery fabrics made of recycled polyester. It was also very successful with IKEA. And there are more and more examples now I can give. But when we mean about chemical recycling fibers in terms of staples side of business, there are now making these cellulosic fibers. There are companies converting into pulp again. There are different processes and different type of doing this kind of process. There are good alternatives in this kind of materials, and we are using their fibers. They are becoming every day better quality, but there is not sufficient availability in the market so far. So I think chemical recycling will be an important future for the sustainable or circular production in terms of raw material in the world.
Very cool, very cool. And what about you, Steven? You obviously work more with post-consumer goods and also more on the synthetic side. How do you define recycling, and which part of the process are you active in?
Recycling for us is that something is already exists in the environment, no matter it's left by consumers, by consuming stage or post-industrial stage, something that is to create the threats to our environment, our human beings, the animals, and all the creatures in the world. Our main study is to recycling synthetic materials, especially recycled polyester and recycled nylon. Basically, recycled polyester is much easier to have the 100% post-consumer. For example, the plastic bottles, everyone knew it's much easier to change the form and to clean it, wash it, and making flakes and yarn. It's much easier to understand. For chemically recycled, it's a little bit difficult because it's a very huge investment. I can give you an example that is a chemically recycling plant. Possibly the investment would be about say, $50 million. In physically recycling plants, and the cost is maximum 1/10. For recycling nylon, it's much more difficult. That is, if we want to make a high quality, it has to be chemically recycled the way similar as Econel or the company named Aquafil, and it's the only company in the world they're using the chemically recycled nylon to produce high quality in recycled nylon contents. We are trying to making some physically recycled nylon, but still we meet not all problems because we cannot remove the impurities. So recycling is something we cannot always say, so it's still synthetic materials, because we cannot take a blind eyes about the plastic bottles, the fish nets that exist in our planet. We got to do something to transform it into something beautiful, garments, or luggages like bags, or something that can used for a couple of years instead of one-time use, to give the materials a second life. Maybe later we can have
deeper discussion.
more questions about.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
You both mentioned elements of the supply chain. Halit, you said you have your own facility that can actually spin them back into yarn. And Steven, you mentioned working with these big specialized people who can do chemical recycling. And I can imagine also collecting the feedstock is also quite difficult and tricky. Maybe you can share about why it is so important to build the right type of supply chain in order to have effective recycling, and what are some of the challenges and intricacies you have come across in waste collection?
We now naming this process as circular economy. It is a different, I think, understanding is becoming to the market. So far, we have been trying to make production as responsible, as sustainable understanding. But now we are trying to be a circular textile production available. We are trying to be part of this. Circular production means we are collaborating with brands. Global brands are our partner in this economy, and they are the companies. They are the part of making this request, they making this demand occur. What's happening now? Our partner brands are collecting their materials back from their customers. Their customers are bringing back their jeans they used and the other garments they used. And these brands are taking these garments back to us. We are separating all these accessories and other impurity things, and we are sorting them out into colors, into blends, everything. And we are going to reopen this material into fiber, which will be so damaged. I mean, you cannot compare how the fiber properties of post-consumer material and pre-consumer material and virgin material can be different. I mean, it is much worn and much difficult to process the production again. But we are investing also these opening factories, opening processes. We newly invested almost 5 million euros investment to make a proper opening in our factory. And all this post-consumer material coming from our customers will be opened in these factories, and we are going to make yarn again and fabrics, and we will resell to these fabrics to our customer again. So their customer, the consumer, will buy the jeans from this company, and what's going to happen? The final customer will reuse their jeans that which they bring back to the company they bought. So it will become a circular understanding of raw materials. And what is supporting this process? Companies, I mean, like Kipas, let's say, we are also using production technologies. I mean, we are generating all our electricity from renewable sources, and we are treating all our wastewater, and we are investing a lot about reducing our water consumption. So on, we are doing many more things behind these production processes. So both the raw material is circular, and both we are producing responsibly, and it will make a circular benefit for the nature and for the people.
It's very impressive. You have such a holistic approach to really close the loop on the product level, but also on your operation. I mean, when you talked about this lot of investment commitment to sorting and collecting, have you been able to automate some of the process to also make it quicker and more economical? I mean, I imagine it's a lot of work that requires time and capital.
Actually, it is the challenge now in the market. When you consider big amounts of waste, sorting is a big problem. And there are a lot of innovation we need to make in this segment, in this part of the process. Right now, it is a manual. I mean, big part of this process is manual. Sorting and separating part takes a lot of workmanship.
Well done. Well done. It's really incredible work. And Stephen, likewise, I first heard about your work through Future Fabric Expo. They told me, Stephen, he's always collecting rubbish in South Asia. Can you maybe share a little bit how you've built up the supply chain and your process of actually collecting waste and turning them into something, beautiful?
Recyctex, on one hand, we working with brands as laminated fabric supplier. And we have to be responsible for the brands and do not bring negative impact to brands. On the other hand, Recyctex ourselves, we are a fabric brand. So it's important to know and about who make our yarn and whether they are in the right place. Several years back, when I attend some conference, some people then curious will see, are you guys still making recycled polyester yarn out of new bottles?
New bottles?
Yeah, I think still, yeah. Some people, they still have same questions, whether we're making new bottles, creating yarn out of new bottles. It's true that it's almost more than 10 years ago, some factory, they do create some yarn that is made from new things because the technology is still has some limits. But since 2012, and the technology is and the technical problem solved, and almost no one making fiber out of new bottles. And still, it's important that is we need to know the seaside conditions or whether those bottles are turned into the yarn. I mean, everything we have to be quite sure about they are doing the real. Otherwise, it will be a scandal to the world. So our supply chain, we try to reduce the driving distance within 3 hours. So to reduce the carbon dioxide footprint. So yarn plants within 3 hours driving, 3 hours driving distance, including chemically recycled plants and physically recycled yarn plants. In China, and there are sufficient of plastic bottles, so we don't have problems of collecting bottles, too much of tourists, a huge population. The challenge is that if it's in sea islands and some like Tibetan areas or some isolated areas, and the bottles are not clean enough, and the freight cost is extremely high, and also the labor cost. For example, I studied more than 12 islands across China, and the fishermen, they can earn an easy life each day. Like they can earn like 50 to 80 US dollars each day by fishing, or they have their own skills. But if they are doing, if they consider to collecting bottles for living, it's almost impossible.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and the freight cost is still a big challenge from collecting bottles from sea islands to the lands, and then from the thousands of miles to squeeze the bottles into like brick-like, and by truck delivery, the cost is extremely high. But we are going to make a change. That is, we can combine a little bit bottles collected from sea islands and from Tibetan areas, like maybe 20 or 30%. The rest could be the plastic bottles from the urban areas, because no one did it before, just because the amounts, the challenges of the qualities. We are doing it, is that we collect more than 30 tons of plastic bottles from Tibetan areas. What we are doing now is creating our own supply chain of transforming the bottles into fine yarns. We give each location a GPS code, and each batch of materials will have a serial number. And still, we will add in a tracer or tracking materials. No matter the yarn made into fabric or garment, it can be still tested by our technology.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Kind of like a RFD system, but for the waste, to track where the waste are and being processed. Is that how it is?
It's a chemical tracker. It's a special master batch. When we making the yarn, we can put it's like certain percentage to mix it, and then each batch of yarn we can have a DNA. Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, it's very interesting to learn about these new technology. And before, you also mentioned because of the impurities, sometimes the quality is lower, but now through chemical recycling, you can actually improve it. Can you maybe just talk a little bit more about, what are the pros and cons of different recycling technologies? What are maybe limitation or no longer limitations to the recycling process?
Physically recycling process it's easier for each individual to join because in theory it's simple. That is, we just change the form of our plastic bottles, remove the caps, the labels, and rest is pure PET materials. By washing it, it's easier to organize the hands and the companies to make this kind of products. The investment is not so expensive. Yeah, it depends what kind of material people consider to produce. If it's for insulation, the padding material, the technology is not so high end. Mm-hmm. And for a filament yarn, for making yarn for garments, the investment is a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that how to maintain the stable qualities of plastic bottles, because each places the bottles quality are quite different. Mm-hmm. If it's from a sea, if from the some people will name it as ocean-bound plastic bottles. Mm-hmm. It will be a little bit dirty with sands and some impurities. So the wastage will be a little bit higher than that collected in urban areas. Mm-hmm. For chemically recycled, it can make very fine yarn and it could be very pure because it's technology that is to open the molecule chain and to remove the impurities like dye stuff, and then through a lot of steps of polymerization to making the chips. Mm-hmm. The biggest challenge is that how to collect the right source of discarded clothes, because most of the garments are mixed fibers. Yes. It could be mixed with spandex, mixed with cotton or nylon something. And for winter jackets, it could be with polyurethane coated to give a function of windproof or downproof. And for ski wear, it has to be laminated with a pure membrane. So those kind of materials, they cannot be chemically recycled to make a new fiber. And for some leggings, has to be with spandex. And it's still almost impossible to recycling to make a new fiber. This is the biggest challenge. There's one plant in China, and before it was a Beijing group joined with a Chinese local company. Mm-hmm. At the very beginning, and people think it's easy to collect the garments, but eventually it turns out to be very difficult, and it's hard to recognize the composition. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way for them is to collect the uniforms or some like the team sports, and they're simple materials and with 1% polyester only. And then they have to combine the pre-consumer waste, that is cuts off. They work with some big sewing factory to collect the material that is leftovers or cuts off. The fabric, small stretches, 100% polyester, then it's easier to transform. That's one of the biggest challenges. That is almost, if we don't have a easy way to tell the composition of the garments, it will be a nightmare for the factories to distinguish it. Yeah. Not everyone is fabric, background. Yeah, it's very, very difficult.
I can really imagine. What about you, for you, Halit? I know you are much more specialized in natural fiber, staple yarn, which up to now, chemical recycling has been more limited, but maybe you're already using much more advanced technology, which can overcome some limitation.
Yes, as I briefly mentioned, we are following and we are using all the developments in chemically recycled fibers. There are really important innovations is going on in this stage, but the availability of this material is not abundant. It is still a niche amount of the market. So we are supporting, we are using, and we are in very close connection with all of them. Some projects, we are also innovative partner of these projects, and it will be available more and more. So far, fibers from Lenzing and from Birla, they are using some chemically recycled pulp, some of their fibers. and it is more abundant in the market, so more available in the market. So in case there is need, we are using this kind of material. But the challenge is price. I mean, this kind of fashion should be more reasonable for the market, I think. But because of these technologies, it is becoming more expensive materials and it is becoming more expensive garments. So I think it is important challenge. I expect these chemically recycled fibers could be more available in the market and have less prices every day. And in terms of staple polyester and polyamide fibers, similar to Steven's production, they are using more filament, but we are more unstable. Fibers from recycled PET bottles are now available in the market, and they are slightly more expensive than virgin polyester materials. And now there are understanding to use this kind of polyester fibers and fabrics. However, there is a challenge of having not enough PET bottles in the world. They say. I mean, when all fashion industry start using all the recycled materials, even we collect from everywhere, it will be not sufficient. It is one of the afraid in the market. And textile is not only industry is using this kind of polyesters, because the bottle industry or other industries also are concerned about nature, and they are trying to use recycled materials. So it is becoming more and more valuable waste in the world. So we are also following closely biopolymers, which are very important. Polyesters made of biopolymerization technology, I think, and I hope can be a good alternative for the future.
Yeah. Let's switch gear a little bit. I mean, you both talked about all the different new innovation technologies. Maybe you can share with us what are some of the recycled fabrics, new fabrics that you are most proud of? Halit?
Actually, we have a very wide variety of collection. We are producing more than 8 million meters of fabrics every month. And we are producing different collections such as denim, upholstery, casual wear, formal wear, shirting collections, technical textiles. We have a wide variety of fabrics, and we have several innovations in these categories. First of all, fabrics made of 100% recycled, physically recycled materials is becoming more innovative in the market, and because of the difficulty of spinning process, they are unique fabrics. And we have all these blends available in our collections. And
how is market feedback? Good hand feel, good.
Yes, they all are important. I mean, the final customer wants to have this garment as they buy with the same expectation from virgin raw materials. So we are also making this very softly and very using friendly fabrics, and we are focusing on natural fibers. Hemp is becoming more important. We are also following, I mean, one of our strategy, let's say, in the meantime, is increasing usage of natural fibers. Besides cotton, we would like to increase the consumption of hemp and linen type of fibers, and we would like to make them more reachable. So we are also developing different type of yarns with hemp. Thanks to our advanced spinning technology, we are developing a lot of special yarns with natural fibers like hemp and linen blended, and we are making a lot of nice materials from upholstery to denim and casual wear. And we are making 100% recycled fabrics made of our own waste. I mean, we are collecting our own waste, polyester waste, for example. We are sending back to the fiber companies. They are making fiber back from our material, and they are sending it to us. And we are creating new fabrics from our own waste. So it is also kind of innovative new collection. And also we are trying new polyesters, technology like cyclo, disposable ideas, and new sustainable but also functional. I mean, it is recycled polyester, but it is also thermal comfort. Also, there is fire retardant. I mean, this kind of properties we are focusing. So there are much more you can find in
lots of innovation. That's
also,
great.
The way of presenting our collection is becoming more innovative every day because of this COVID times. We are now totally digital. We are presenting our collections in our portals digitally. We are making presentations to our customers as we are face-to-face meeting, and they can reach our collection with pictures from our web portals.
Yeah, nice. And Stephen, what are the 2, 3 material that you're most proud of?
For materials, we have tons of materials, and I think 3 highlights. First is that we are the world's first company using EcoNail for woven since 2014, and our technology is better, actually better than Japanese company. We had compared same qualities, and we have more details to making the recycled nylon fabric. So that is, we are earlier than Prada and Burberry for at least 5 years, and in 2014, 2015, and no one tell me what to do with the materials, but we think it's the future of nylon in materials. So we design different structures and then selected by American brands. And until today, we are still the few companies that can manufacture the EcoNail fabric, recycled nylon fabric. Second is that of flexibility. For filament yarn or for woven fabric, biggest challenge is MOQ. Most of material fabrics for factory how to quote like about 60,000 meters for a regular MOQ. But our main customers are brands and designers. So we have to think about every solutions to bring down MOQ. In 2014, we can make 3,000 meters. Yeah. And 2 years ago, we found a way to adjust our machine seat to rewind yarn bobbins. So we can create something absolutely new from 200 meters. So our capacity is from 200 meters to 2 million meters per order. And the third is that the most exciting project for me is that I cannot tell too much details, but it will be a revolutionary product. That is, we use the new technologies, to combine tracer materials and still the plastic bottles with a location from the far away, from the west part of China, and a little bit is from the sea islands. And we are creating something that is absolutely new, and it feels like a cotton, but much more durable. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very much looking forward to hearing about the products. Maybe just one final remark from both of you, just a very quick one. Where do you think things will head in the next 5 years in terms of recycling?
One quick thing, I just remind, when Stephen mentioned about tracer technology, it is now becoming also important in cotton, and there are tracers for staple fibers as well, and we are now blending tracers in our fabrics. So where we are going in next 5 years, I think traceability will be important. The customer can trace the garment they are buying from the store, whole supply chain easily, and it will create more trust. And what will happen for the future? Brands or suppliers will have to work more closely to present their customers higher trust, because transparent production, transparent supply chain will become more and more important. There will be a value for sustainable production, and we have to keep this value and bring to our customers. And I think using more natural fibers and more 100% compositions will be in tendency because of the recyclability easiness. So I think these are main trends that will evolve in future, and also chemical recycling for sure, as we talked.
Well said. Anything else to add, Stephen?
Yes, I think there will be several new changes. The first is that more and more recycled material will be used in fashion industry, and especially for physically recycled materials. Hopefully within 5 years, there will be like 70% of virgin polyester or virgin materials, and 30% will be recycled. Because still there's some cost challenge, and crude oil compared with recycled material is still at the bottom of the history price list. Yeah, so it will be a challenge that is for brands when consider about purchasing, how to convince
the teams to use more recycled materials.
Well, let's hope the government regulators will also step in to either subsidize more sustainable material or tax, the less sustainable ones, right? To bring the in the price.
Yeah, second is that the traceability, as Halit mentioned, there will be new ways, that is to check whether the material is made from recycled or not. Because right now the common tool is to use the GI certification, the transaction certificate. But sometimes only a certification is not enough to prove the whole supply chain. Then from the raw materials to the end products, how to track on is more important. And luckily we saw that is more and more methods will be adopted in fashion industry, such as blockchain or adding the tracer in manufacturing the material. Thirdly, I think is that more and more bio-based materials will be used.
Yes.
Yeah. Bio-based and agricultural byproducts will be used. This field we are still studying. For example, the POA materials or the leftover of the banana trees. We luckily I have some samples of the banana tree leaves fibers, and we are studying to making more and more products out of it. Yeah, that's it. And I hope maybe we can have more discussions in next time.
Definitely. Well, thank you both again for sharing your expert knowledge and really opening our eyes to the world of recycling. Thank you also to Future Fabric Expo for putting together this panel and always being the trailblazer to bring knowledge to the fashion and design world. From textile end, we're also working hard to help brands more easily source sustainable fabrics, and at the same time connecting yarn and fabric suppliers such as Kipas and Recyctex to bring more closed loop recycled fabrics into the market. I really encourage the audience to take a look on Future Fabric Expo's digital platform to discover more of these recycled fabrics from Kipas and Recyctex. And finally, I think as we learned today, it's so critical that all actors in the chain really need to work together to find solutions and challenges in each step of the process. And today's panel is a really beautiful testimony of how this collaboration is really happening. So I hope for you, the audience, it's been an insightful and inspiring session to really discover about new technologies and innovation that is enabling possibilities to really create beautiful fashion from upcycled resources. So thank you again for tuning in.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Yeah, thank you.